Here comes the return of the legendary Colby Covington. For a long time, he had been missing. We haven't heard much about him, but recently he volunteered to underwrite one of the title fights without anyone knowing about it, and after that event Dana White promised the American a title fight against Leon Edwards. Hello fighters, this is World of MMA. In this video, I'm going to give my predictions for the highly anticipated fight between Leon Edwards and Colby Covington. But before you start this video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like it so that as many fans as possible can see this video. Let's take a look back at Colby's original journey, so we can at least have an idea of what's next for him. He started in the world's premier promotion as an ordinary, unassuming fighter. He was winning confidently, but not in a spectacular way, and because of this, the UFC wanted to get rid of him, although he was on the winning streak. But as we see, the main promotion of the world is first of all business, and only then the sports component. Covington was quick to understand what they needed, and on one Brazilian tournament he harshly criticized Brazilian fans in general. He created a big stir around his name, and of course, no firing was out of the question. At least for that period of time he began to get dignified bouts, because now the fans were interested in him. They watched with the hope that he would lose every fight, thereby making big profits with tournaments featuring him. That's how he was able to win the interim welterweight belt by destroying Rafael dos Anjos in every round. But because of the long absence he was deprived of the belt and had to fight the veteran of the sport, Robbie Lawler, whom he also destroyed and won by unanimous decision. Then he got what he wanted. The company gave him a title fight which he lost by TKO at the end of the 5th round. About 6 months later he goes out for his next fight against the surrendered Tyron Woodley. Covington wins by TKO due to injury to the American and goes for the title fight again against Kamaru and loses again, only this time by decision. And now, just last year, he fights his former friend Jorge Masvidal, who he defeated by decision, too. It was not without problems, but Colby was the winner, and that is the end of his professional fights and the beginning of his adventures on the street. I think we've all heard by now that Masvidal has been ambushing Colby and giving him a couple of good punches to the face, and of course Covington has filed a report. The case is stalled for now, but Colby is about to step into the octagon to try and win the welterweight title for a 3rd time. Well, we'll move on smoothly to a breakdown of this fight. Who will prove to be the stronger fighter? Will Colby's wrestling work? We're about to find out. So the first thing we're going to start with is a punching bag, and Leon is next. I realized something from watching a few of his fights. In his fights against wrestlers, he concentrates so much on transfers that he forgets to work the counter properly. Because of that, I think we saw Kamaru's superiority over Edwards in the stand-up. Leon was so worried about the transfers that he was trying to squeeze up against the cage and keep his hands close to his legs, which allowed Usman to hit him with his punches. That was the case in both the first and second fights, so I can safely state that. In fights against fighters who have no wrestling at all, Edwards is a much better fighter. Look at the fight against Diaz, where Leon showed the whole arsenal of his punches. There was just about everything. Edwards didn't give up anything. And in his fight against Kamaru, the Englishman was too uptight and limited his attacks. Colby has a similar style to Usman, and he'd have to take advantage of that game plan and he'd be finished. Now let's move on to Colby Covington's striking skills, and we obviously have a lot to talk about. As we know, Colby is a basic wrestler. But if he needs to, he can easily box.
The fight against Robbie Lawler is a case in point. In that fight we saw for the first time that Covington not only knows how to wrestle, but also how to fight intelligently in the stand-up. If you take a closer look at his fight, it's clear that he has no goal to knock out. What matters most to him is the fact that he's striking. He's not taking at the expense of power, but of quantity, and that's how he's outboxing his opponent twice or even 3 times in a stand-up fight. But lately his jaw has been starting to give out. A total of 3 times he has fallen in fights against Kamaru Usman. Also, a punched fighter in the form of Jorge Masvidal was able to put the American on his heel, and that tells us that if the Brit hits well, Colby is very likely to go down. In terms of the favorite, I'll still pick Edwards. His versatility will make him look preferable to the challenger. Next up on the plan is wrestling, and this time we're going to start with champion Leon Edwards. But what can we say about his wrestling? I think 2 consecutive training camps to Kamaru Usman obviously didn't go by just for nothing. He's been honing his defense against transfers and stuff like sweeps. In the first fight, as we remember, Edwards wasn't himself. He didn't look good in the stand-up, he didn't show anything in the wrestling either. But in the second fight he corrected all the mistakes that were there and didn't let anybody take him over. Of course there were some episodes where Usman stopped Edwards. But this time it was much less, where he got up almost instantly. I think for the fight against Colby, he's taking responsibility, and he's not going to let himself be moved for nothing. Leon has a good defense against transfers, and if Kamaru has had problems, Covington will have problems 100%. Now we get to Colby's wrestling, and he's a bit of a fish in water here. All of his fights are like copies of his fights. A few minutes in the stand-up, then a series of unanswered transfers. Why do I say series? It's simple. Colby transfers, but he's never been able to control his opponent. Rafael dos Anjos, Jorge Masvidal, even Tyron Woodley have risen from under the American, and so Colby takes at the expense of quantity. With styles like that, he can wear out the Brit and control him quietly. I'm not sure that will be the case, but the kind of style that Colby has. It won't be easy for Edwards to adjust, so I'm going to go with Colby Covington, who has been in this field a long time and is clearly capable of moving the puncher. What can you say about Colby's cardio? I can say with absolute certainty that the American has the best cardio in the entire UFC. He can go at least 10 rounds and destroy his opponents. He has the highest rhythm, and I've never seen him get tired of it. He's always pushing forward and getting what he wants. As for the British fighter, he is definitely not as good as the American in terms of cardio. But that's not to say that Colby will directly outbreathe him. Edwards has had his moments in his career where he's shown that his cardio is also at a high level. Still, I'll pick Colby Covington as the favorite. Due to his natural giftedness, he'll still look better. As for spirit, I'll also trust Colby, who always goes forward no matter what. I think Colby will win this fight by decision. He will mix wrestling with punching, and because of that, Edwards will keep getting confused and missing extra punches that will lead to defeat. As for Colby's future, once he wins the title, a bunch of hungry contenders, including Kamaru, will pounce on him, and Edwards will continue to conquer the welterweight tops. But not to say he'll come close to the title picture again.